besides the Europeans, which
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about them.
everyone
don't
thinks
care
that
about them.
Europe's the crown jewel. Europe is Disney. It's a poor Disneyland. They die from heat in the summer, and all they can do is endless bureaucracy. If Europe has
It's like,
zero haters, I
you
am
can't
home.
sit at my table. I don't,
No,
Europe, whatever.
we don't need Europe. But
And then Welcome to Rivera and Reeves, the podcast where we break through the bias, report the news, and occasionally trip over our soapboxes while ranting about the headlines.
Every week, we tackle the biggest stories with sharp analysis, unfiltered honesty, and just enough sarcasm to keep it fun.
So pull up a chair, grab your coffee, and join us as we wade through the spin because the media is trash and we have zero patience for their nonsense. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Rivera and Reeves. I'm Mercedes, and I am here with my friend Amanda. Say hello, Amanda.
hi, thank you so much for having me.
Now everyone's like, where is Rachel? So Rachel ditched me. Actually, she broke up with me. She's probably listening to this episode right now as I'm going to complain about the fact that she is, I'm just teasing. She has been doing a retreat in Virginia and scheduling, time management, getting back home, kids and stuff. So I told her, you know what, take the day. And I'm going to pick Amanda's brain because there's been some stuff happening online and there's a lot of input and discussion, especially when it comes to Gen Z, younger Republicans, just the youth in general. The youths. And I thought it would be good to, typically Amanda joins us to talk about foreign policy, but I was like, I want to pick your brain as one of the youths-ish, at least younger than me, significantly younger than me anyway.
I'm not that young, but I think I speak
In comparison,
to them, so
I'm talking about. And you were
no,
like,
and you're not old, so we're gonna be fine.
It'll be
But
good.
it'll
So yeah. So, but before we get started, if this is your first time here, welcome. You have found your new favorite podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button, subscribe button, whatever button it is that you need to press to make sure that you keep in touch with us on whichever platform of your choosing. Podcast, YouTube, Substack. We're kind of all over the place right now, like strategically. Okay.
Mhm.
In the meantime, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, how many days was it? Was it like 42, 43 days of a shutdown? Something along
Yeah.
those lines, right?
I think,
Okay.
yeah, 42 or 43.
Yeah. I don't know exactly. I know yesterday the vote passed. The government is officially reopened for business. The president signed the bill. So we're good to go. There's been a lot of drama, of course, among the Democrats, which I thought I know this wasn't on, I didn't even discuss this when we first started, but I thought it was really interesting that they dominated, and I'm air quoting, won these elections in blue states and were very excited, win behind, and then you had the flip with was it 8 Democrats that flipped? I think it was what was needed was 8. And that finally we got now I don't want to go into a deep discussion about the shutdown, but I just thought what I think is funny is like on basically Monday, we're awesome and we've won and we're going to take over. And then like 24 hours later, there's a Democrat civil war and everything's like falling apart because of this continuing resolution and having the government shut down.
Yeah, well, and it's weird because they were like, the Republican shutdown, and then they crossed over to vote for the same thing, like the same CR as before, with a guaranteed vote, not even passing on Obamacare subsidies. And now you're seeing the infighting, and I'm not clear what they think they were going to gain. I don't understand.
I think that was the issue.
Yeah, I don't think that they're clear on it. And I don't understand, why we on the right were just kind of like letting them do their thing, and then we just kind of called it the Schumer shutdown a few times and didn't like drive our own messaging super clearly on that. I guess we're too focused on fighting about like Ben Shapiro versus Tucker Carlson or something, but I don't know what they thought they were gaining from it. I don't think they know. I don't think their party. I wish we could focus more on trying to. It just seems like, I don't know. There's something to like the MAGA, like as long as Trump's in power and Trump's in charge, he's kind of the seat of MAGA. His eye seems off the ball though. Why wasn't
Yeah,
he
which
going
is
after the Democrats
one of the
more?
things that I want to
Yeah,
discuss too, because while we had this whole Democrat thing and now everybody's like the Democrat war, which yes, I acknowledge I think is happening, because the DSA and the more progressive wing of the party is trying to drag the rest of the party kicking and screaming. There's also been a lot of debate happening on the right in regards to the same thing. It's interesting because I watch the news on a quad. So I watch Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and then also the BBC. And so I'm always watching the chyrons, while I have it playing just to see how everybody's covering everything. And while, Fox News is talking about a Democrat civil war, you have MSNBC and CNN talking about a Republican civil war or a civil war on the right. So like everybody's fighting. Okay. Now I want to be forward looking in today's episode. And specifically, like, if you guys have been listening and following online, we know that because Rachel and I did a whole discussion about the Tucker-Fuentes interview and also what happened with the Heritage Foundation. And there's continued dialogue that's been happening in regards to Fuentes and Tucker. Candace Owens has also been brought into this kind of because of Israel, but also because of what she's been covering with Charlie Kirk.
yeah.
But there's also been a lot of discussion of like, what is all of this about? And what is the underlining like real issue, or how is this being used? And I read an article because we can talk about like, yes, and we'll get into this. Yes, Gen Z is upset about the economy. Yes, there's an affordability issue. Yeah, and Trump's lack of messaging. But specifically in this idea of civil war, I feel like there's like a two-part thing. So, but actually the other part, I think it's mainly about like who is going to rule the Republicans or MAGA after Trump. Am I crazy?
No, I think gets to the heart of what this is. I think right now these kind of fringe left people, or not even left, well, the left wants to exploit it. I think like the fringe right, I think there's a whole conversation we could have about how like Fuentes and those types have co-opted America first to mean something completely different than what it means.
Yeah.
They're trying to move the Overton window to closer to their side, which I don't think is going to work, but they would love to appear
Okay,
to
so
have.
moving you're talking about the Groyper Nick Fuentes type, which is very Gen Z, especially Gen Z males are very interested in right now. Or I don't want to say
Yeah.
interested in, but they're just like listening to. Let's put it that way. And I don't think it's
Well,
necessarily sometimes out of malice as much as it is entertainment,
yeah.
but entertainment can leak and turn into malice depending on, how convincing and charismatic the individual is, which Fuentes is.
Yeah.
And so it's, it was Tucker and everyone. But my question is like, how are we shifting this Overton window? Like, what does it mean to, like, in your opinion or what you're seeing, what does that shift mean? What's in the window if you were to shift it over, essentially?
I don't know that there's a cohesive thing. I think that they're trying to shift it, and I think the establishment is trying to shift it back to where the Republican
Yeah.
Party was before Trump. That's, I think, kind of obvious. I don't think Fuentes and those types of people, I think the only thing they really care about is hating Israel. I don't know who needs to hear this. There's not going to be another major war in the Middle East, in my opinion, for like another 15 years. People want to say that the biggest threat in the Middle East was the threat of Iran and its resistance axes. That's pretty much gone. The Houthis still have some firing power. The Iraqi militias in Iran, the Shia militias in Iraq were not really involved, so they still have some firepower. Hezbollah is like a third of its capacity. There might be another skiff but there's not going to be some other big thing. We're not going to be giving all of these weapons and aid to Israel anymore. We're going to dump what we don't need anymore from the global war on terror on them because we need to buy new weapons to fight in the Pacific. And that's kind of going to be it. We're not like they want
And
to
you
talk
think
about
that's going to happen within Trump's presidency?
Yeah, I think that they're going to kind of finish this stuff up. And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some sort of like Middle Eastern NATO where like our commanders kind of tell everybody what to do, and then we kind of train people, we give them all weapons, and it's going to be like Israel, the Saudis, the Emiratis, like Turkey, all of these countries, and they're kind of going to fight their own battles. I hope. That's what I hope. And that's what Trump was trying to aim for in his first term. I think that that's where we're heading. So that's kind of this like Fuentes Groyper thing. I think that they like the memes and stuff. I think that there's a real issue with people clipping things that he said from years ago that are horrific.
Mhm.
And then people who only see those clips think that that's what he's talking about 100% of the time. And then the people who want to give him the benefit of the doubt because they do think he's entertaining are like, but he's so much more than that. You're unfairly maligning him. It's like, well, I don't really know that it's unfair to use what he has said. Like, again, I don't think that that's unfair. But
Well, and
like,
it's also, like, some of the comments aren't exactly, like, 10 years ago. Some of the comments have to
yeah,
do specifically with JD Vance and
like now.
Usha and,
Yeah.
like, yeah, as in they were in the last, like, year or 2. So,
Right.
anyone who's just kinda, like, flippantly going, "He's not that
I just
bad."
I think that that's an issue of long form versus short form in general. Long
Mhm.
form, the only people who listen to long form, like you and me, or Fuentes or Tucker or any of these people, they want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then they say these really crazy things that can get clipped. We don't do this, they do this, that get clipped. And then people act like it's all the clips. And so it's like you're almost battling two different people and it's the same person and it's all these things. But I think that that's where things get lost in translation. But I think this like Gen Z movement, I don't think that they necessarily want anything besides the hating Israel piece. I think that they want to feel like they're in control. I don't know. I
Well,
don't even know what they want. What do you think?
what so I was thinking about this. So there's 2 things happening. So I sent you this article from The Federalist, which was published
Yes.
earlier this month,
And I totally
which I
agree with that.
yeah, so I'm gonna just share it here just so everybody can see it if you guys are watching. Not presentation, this one. It's like, that's the wrong one. And so in this article, it says the attacks on Heritage and Kevin Roberts are really about foreign policy and JD Vance. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article here, but if I was to summarize it for you, they're basically pointing out, yes, we can discuss Fuentes. We can discuss what he says. We can discuss how the Heritage Foundation handled the situation. But specifically, the argument that this article is making is that the debate of Fuentes and Tucker Carlson having Fuentes on and the resistance to what's the word I'm looking for? Like this whole like canceling, and I don't want to get into the ins and out. We already have had discussed the ins and outs of like what's canceling and what's the proper way. That's not what I'm trying to discuss here. What this article is arguing is that there is a contingent within the Republican Party that many would categorize as neocons or, just your traditional old school, maybe Bush Republican type that are vying to battle out what the Trump administration or what happens after the Trump administration, what the Republican Party will be and what MAGA will be. And I thought this particular article, and I'll share a link to this article in the show notes if you guys want to read it, kind of lays out that case, um, and that they're using this debate of Fuentes, Tucker, anti-Semitism, Israel to actually like to create more division to pull the party away from JD Vance, who is the current heir apparent if we were to continue on. Because, I mean, I know Trump jokes about it and he has 2028 hats, but he's not running for president again.
No.
So the hope is that they want to like pull this party back under the, neocon is really the only description I can like generally come up with. But you know who I'm
Yeah.
talking about. You're talking about like I'm talking about like, the Bush. It's not even like Mitt Romney still exists, but that's the type that like a Lindsey Graham type who
Yeah.
actually campaigned against Vance, even though Lindsey Graham acts like he's all in love with the president now. I don't trust that man at all in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
is that what you've seen too, battling out? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, but I also think it's a really simplistic understanding of it. Like, what would a
Well, I
super
think that is
neocon.
what is bringing up this whole like
Okay,
because
what I
there's
mean
this demand from JD Vance, you must announce or you must
yeah.
come out and criticize. And for all these
Well,
other people, and that, like, honestly, frankly, that kind of annoys me because if you have the vice president coming out talking about Nick Fuentes and denouncing Nick Fuentes and everything, when he's already been critical of Fuentes, clearly,
right.
I mean, he said some disgusting things about his wife. So I don't think he's a fan. So this demand of like, you must stand on the pulpit or behind the vice presidential seal and denounce him is only going to bring more attention to him. So, like, I find
Right.
that entire narrative annoying.
I totally agree. When I say that it's simplistic, I think in general, Americans' ideas about foreign policy are simplistic. So that's why, like, these people who know better, like Lindsey Graham and like Tucker Carlson,
Uh huh.
blanket calling all these people isolationists or neocons, they're playing into something that they know that the audience doesn't fully understand. And I think that that's super dishonest of both of them, and it really bothers me. And you're right, like, yeah, it's beneath the office of the vice president of the United States to comment on what right wing podcasters are saying. And also, when people try and say, oh, it's going to be, Zoran Mandami and the Democrats versus Nick Fuentes and the right. No, because Zoran Mandami has power. He's a mayor.
Hmm.
Like, he can do things. Nick Fuentes can say things. Saying things and having the government's power and arm to do things are two very different things. Not to say that there's no problems with Fuentes, but like, no, it's not right wing podcasters versus crazy left wing lunatic like elected officials. No, sorry. No, that's not the choice. The choice is between normal, rational JD Vance Republicans and other Republicans. Everybody can be in that tent who may have friendships with Tucker, who is outside of the Overton window now, versus crazy left-wing lunatic Democrat elected officials. That's what the fight is. You don't get to define us by our podcasters. Sorry. Like,
Well, and I
I don't
think there's a
know.
big difference too, because on the left, you're seeing a rise of DSA candidates.
Yeah.
Like currently, neighbor Georgia has a DSA candidate running for governor. You've seen
Yeah.
them running for mayor. Seattle right now, the mayor of Seattle is neck and neck. And I don't know if she's DSA, but she's definitely like socialist friendly for sure. So I think we're having completely different issues. Now, however, in that realm, that's not to say that there shouldn't be some concern about, because there's a lot of discussion about like young men, which I think is interesting because like nobody talks about the young women that are just going like
Crazy.
crazy on the left. And you don't hear a lot of Republicans being like, well, what are we going to do to entice these young women to come back? Which is a discussion for another day because I don't like, we have a list of things to discuss.
Mhm.
But specifically, I think overall, both for the women, for young women and young men, this interest in socialism, like Mondani's versus, this Groyper energy, which is very, I don't even know if nationalist, it's very nihilistic with a sprinkle with some like nationalism. But I think it's all rooted in what are they expecting to see in the future? Like, what is in store for me in the future? Which I think is where the affordability economy discussion comes in.
Totally. Well, what I really think it is, I don't think it's starting to bother me. I saw some girl at the Daily Wire who was like, our generation is conservative and we're mad that Trump's not conservative enough. That's not what it is.
That,
I
yeah,
don't even
Isabel Brown said that. I saw that.
Yeah, okay, is that her name? I don't remember her name, I'm sorry. And then there was this I'm seeing all these, like, left-wing people, it's like, "No, actually, the young people are socialists." I don't think young people in general have really intense beliefs about socialism or conservatism.
Conservatism or
Yeah.
capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's very, unfortunately, I think it's very, I don't want to say simplistic because it sounds like dismissive and that's not my intent, but it's not something that, like, I grew up with certain type of messaging throughout my, schooling. The Cold War was around when I was young. I was in my formative years during the War on Terror. It was all very pro-capitalist, pro-America, that kind of traditional. And I think because we've removed a lot of like civics and those type of lessons out from the school, and also a lot of the formative years were spent at home behind a computer in a Zoom class for many of the Gen Z, especially that are coming up right now. I don't think they're like particularly committed to one economic policy over another as much as like they just want to feel that there is a future and that they can live comfortably, even though I don't know what comfortably means to them, because I think to them
I it's something
is
different, yeah.
different than what I would describe as comfortably. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think that Gen Z overall doesn't doesn't have the same feelings towards, like, normal labels that we have, and then I think on top of that, I think that they just want change, and they're open to change whether it be socialism or hyper nationalism. Like, they just want something different. I think I saw something yesterday that unemployment for 18 to 24-year-olds is at almost 10%, so these are a lot of people. And the last time it was that low was during COVID. So these are, like, right at the beginning. So these are people with a lot of time on their hands who are watching a lot of content apparently, whether it be from Hassan Piker or Fuentes, who have these kind of unorthodox beliefs. They don't believe everything. They think it's entertaining. They don't wanna just be scolded. They're not going to just sit and be scolded by people, "Well, you're
No,
this or you're
especially
that,"
not
anymore.
after
Yeah,
everything that we've seen in the last like decade or so.
right.
There's no tolerance.
And so they just want something new. And I think that this is where it's really a shame that Charlie Kirk was assassinated because the thing he offered them was like, "No, go get married, go to church, have kids, and build a career." You know what I mean? And I think that that's more beneficial to society as a whole and to, like, the individual
Absolutely.
person than, like, let's do Hitler revisionism. Um, unfortunately, a crazy lunatic person, like, trans, furry, whatever, assassinated Charlie, and so now we
That's
have to
not what
deal with.
Candace Owens says, but I'm not gonna get into that. Like, it's
Yeah.
not it's like, that's for my Substack for another day.
So I think people are looking at the Gen Z debate with the what are young men thinking? I think that they're looking at it wrong. They're not conservative or socialist. They want change. I don't think they know quite what change they want. They just want something to be different. They want an opportunity to do better than what every generation wants, to do better, to give to their kids better than what their parents gave to them. And I think there's a lot of differing opinions that they're open to hearing about that, and they're
And
not
it's
open to be lectured
okay,
about.
so on that mindset, so I've had this theory that I've been thinking through, which might be overly simplistic. But I think in the end, this all has to do or would be benefited from like the economy and affordability. Like if
Totally.
people were comfortable or at least saw the potential for improvement, for upward mobility, especially when it comes to, their finances, their education, their career, I th I don't think many of these debates would be so much of a major issue, and it's more about because that's how it is historically. Even if you were especially if we like, right now, we're particularly divided, but when you're talking about an independent voter or a voter, they just want to vote for someone that they feel is going to make their life either maintain or that they'll be able to progress, and I think whoever wins that battle on the message of being able to create a better future and make your current life, obviously easier, I think we'll kind of win this out and all of this tug and pull from the far right and the far left will die down.
I agree. I agree 100%. Well, and can I just say how happy I am that we're no longer in the 2012 talking points of like, "Well, why do you think the government should make your life better?" Because I agree
Okay.
with that, by the way. But
So
it's not a compelling argument. It's not a compelling political case, and I'm just so glad that we're no longer in that. Um, I think about that a lot now because that
wait, that we're no longer in what? How can the government make your life better or
it just I feel like when I was in college, Republicans, it would always be spoken about of like, "We just need to get the government out, and we should never expect the government to make our lives better." It's not the government's responsibility if they're just less, then things will be better. You should focus on yourself. And I agree with those points. I just think in today's day and age, when we have felt the arm of the government make our lives really, really bad, I think that we can ask certain things of the government to make our lives good. I was thinking about this because I don't know if you saw the
I'm
Peter Thiel.
confused.
Okay. So how
So, okay, I'm confused here. So, because I've always been of the mindset, this could be like just an old school mindset, but like get out as much as possible, deregulate as much as possible. Don't be so involved because of the fact that the more, and especially when we're looking at like healthcare costs, when we look at student loans, all of them have increased significantly in price and have become more
yes.
expensive because of the government meddling
In like
versus when you
subsidies, yeah.
yes, and with subsidies and everything like that. So that's why I've always been of the mindset of now I do think there are things that the government can do to make things better by getting rid of things that cause these issues. Is that what
Yes.
you're okay? Because I'm
That's
like,
kind of what I'm saying. Maybe I'm not saying it that well. No, but it's kind of one of those things where I just feel like when I was like younger and like it was I don't want to like single him out, but it was like the Ben Shapiro talking point to be like, the government, like just get the government out. And it's like, how about no, President Trump is going to do this, which is getting the government out. Like
so
he's
you're
gonna
talking
stop
about a messaging issue.
messaging, but also it's kind of like, I don't know. Did you see this thing that just went kind of viral again, the Peter Thiel email from 2017 talking about
Yeah,
why
that
young
he was
people
talking
embrace
about
socialism?
millennials, and it was like 80% of I can't remember. Go ahead and break it down because I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Peter Thiel sent an email to the Facebook executive board
Tell
and like,
people who Peter Thiel is first,
oh,
just
sorry.
in case. Yeah,
Peter Thiel is a billionaire Silicon Valley tech giant. He founded
he's weird.
PayPal. Yeah. He founded PayPal. He's right leaning. He endorsed President Trump in 2016. He's openly gay. Um, he is an investor in things like Palantir, and he has a fund which, um, like pays kids to drop out of college basically and like go start these tech companies. And he's kind of he's very revered in certain circles because he's
And he's
seen as
very
very,
like, yeah, it depends. And
yeah.
he also has this interesting actually, I'm not gonna mention it because I can't remember it because he has this like he did this interview and it was something about like AI is going to help prevent or bring up it was like some kind of far out like about the Antichrist or something like that. Have you seen
Oh yeah,
him?
no. Well, something that people joke about with a lot of these San Francisco guys is they're like, I don't want to make fun, like light up, like they're all not the most social people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or like they're a
they're
little
awkward.
awkward. Okay,
Yeah.
people, yeah. And so it's like this. He's a huge boogeyman to people. "Oh, Peter Thiel backed JD Vance. He's terrible. He's this crazy." And a lot of that just comes from the fact that he was openly conservative before San Francisco was kind of having this right leaning tinge with
Yeah, he was
some of
ahead
their
of the
people.
curve. So,
Yeah,
but what was
and
his letter? What did his letter say? What was his theory?
but so he gave a lecture on what the Antichrist is, and it's like, what is that? He did that like a couple months ago. But then with this letter, he was on the Facebook executive board back in 2017. He sent it to like Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and all these people saying, I think that we should not just dismiss these young people who are open to socialism. I think that we should try to understand where they're coming from. And if
Yeah.
we look at it, like if the system of capitalism they don't feel like is working for them because they're, riddled with these student loans. And especially if you think about the type of millennials that they were talking about, people who work at Facebook. These are people who have to live in really high cost of living areas at the time in 2016, 2017, like San Francisco, like New York, like LA, like, where those hubs are. They can't be in middle America because work from home didn't really exist yet.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
Yeah. And so, they don't have the benefits of buying a house 20 years ago and living in the same place and writing that up and stuff. They were riddled with the student loans. And Thiel's point basically was like, instead of lecturing them about why socialism's bad, we should understand they don't feel like capitalism worked for them, and so they're probably open to an alternative, aka socialism. That went re-viral after Tuesday's election results, and then the Free Press did an interview with him, basically just expanding on it and stuff. And he was saying like, I'm optimistic about this, but I'm not surprised about the Zora Mandami effect. I think that we're going to see more of it. Kind of the gist was that.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, then the Free Press published a bunch of their letters to the editor. And it was the first two letters to the editor, if you go read these, it was just these like I don't want to boomer bash because I think it's like boring, but like it was just boomers who were like, well, we taught our kids to be fine. So people just need to figure it out. And it's like, uh, just telling this now growing voter bloc, well, just figure it out. We had it hard too, is not going to work, especially when you're seeing the government, for instance, in last Tuesday's elections, got rid of property taxes for like older people so that their tax burden is alleviated. We're never talking
Where
about
was
cutting
that?
social Texas.
Oh, I did not see that. Well,
Yeah,
I didn't
because
follow Texas.
these things aren't spoken about as much. Like they're talking about doing that in Florida now too. They like we are never talking about cutting back on Social Security and Medicare, right? Even though we know it will be insolvent in like less than 10 years. And so it's just kind of this thing where it's like, I think it's funny that
Do
boomers
you
are like, you
think
don't
that
deserve
though?
handouts. You want socialism and handouts, but there are a lot of incentives that get them to that. You know what I mean? A lot of the reason we have these zoning problems with like why we can't build more in certain of these like high density areas is because of boomer voters not wanting their property values to decrease and not wanting to like change zoning law. So it's like it's kind of one of these things. The point I'm trying to make when I say like we can't just say get the government out of the way. Some of these places the government is in the way, or sometimes we are willing to use the government to benefit a certain voter class, and
Well,
I
that's what
don't
I was
think
about
that
to
we should.
say
Yeah,
because that's about. I mean, you would be naive to think that not like both parties will pass policies to favor their most trustworthy voter base. So,
right.
for example, Democrats, they have always long thought that they have the young vote. So they're going to, it's like the student loan issue and healthcare issue, as opposed to when you're dealing with Republicans, usually who comes out to vote for them the most and most reliable that they can't risk losing are older Americans who own their home and have Social
Mhm.
Security. So, I'm not surprised that, you can be critical of both sides that that's who they're catering to or who they're passing their policies to. So,
Yeah.
okay, so like now we have the midterms are coming up
Mhm.
and there's this battle of what's the message for the midterms. And it's always I guess, like, the party in power always typically, historically, has a harder challenge because they're the ones in power. So if there's an issue at the time, they're gonna see it as they're the cause of the problem. And it's clear to me that affordability, the economy I think is gonna be huge for the midterms. And if people don't feel like things are improving, they're not wanting to give this administration more power by voting for more representatives, giving more representatives in Congress. So Trump recently did an interview with Laura Ingraham and he was asked, there was like two conversations that happened or three. There was like three things that happened. And I want to hit on each one of them and kind of talk about what he's talking about, but looking at it specifically toward like how that can affect the midterms, how he can get better at the messaging or like what needs to be done for the midterms and also with the youth vote in mind. Because there's
Mhm.
other, but this is what I'm particularly interested in right now. So specifically, first of all, he was asked about there's this whole discussion about because this is immigration involved whether you're like it or not, immigration does also involve the economy and about students specifically, which were a bunch of Chinese students getting, I guess, student visas to come to the United States. So let me play that clip for you first.
Folks are not thrilled about this idea of hundreds of thousands of foreign students in the United States. We have about 350,000 Chinese. One point during COVID, you were going to, push to, get them out, but that was pulled back. You've said as many as 600,000 Chinese students could come to the United States. Why, sir, is that a pro-MAGA position when so many American kids want to go to school and there are places not for them and these universities are getting rich off Chinese money?
Sure. Never said about China, but we do have a lot of people coming in from China. We always have China and other countries. We also have a massive system of colleges and universities. And if we were to cut that in half, which perhaps makes some people happy, you would have half the colleges in the United States go out of business.
So what?
Well, I think that's a big deal.
Are they fans
You would have the
fans of the United States?
Yeah, but you would have, as you know, historically black colleges and universities would all be out of business. You would have a system of colleges and universities would
So
go
we're
down the
dependent on
tubes.
China to keep our
No, not
university
China,
system going?
but I think it's good to have. I actually think it's good to have outside countries. Everyone treats us badly because that's the way I am. But we take in trillions of dollars from students. You know, the students pay more than double when they come in from most foreign countries. I want to see our school system thrive, but at the same time, I know you and I disagree.
Yeah.
We're never going to agree on it, but that's okay. And a business.
So he's talking about the universities at like, it almost seems more concerned as the universities as a business or versus the students and bringing in so many people, like, I mean, from China, but from anywhere as foreign students.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one of the things that I kind of think is a problem with this administration as a whole is that we really feel like we only have 4 years to get things done. And so people like Laura Ingraham, people who are big immigration hawks, and I know we've texted about this. I'm becoming one because it's getting like kind of insane. They just want it all cut off, and you're starting to now see a debate between people wanting a full immigration moratorium, and I'm kind of there. And then people were like, okay, calm down. We can't do that. You know what I mean?
That's probably
We're
me,
not going to be
but
able to do
okay.
that. And I think that Laura Ingraham probably speaks more for that. Like, okay, if we're just turning off the spigot, why do we not turn it off for foreign students? And then I think you have Trump who's like, okay, well, we need to kind of back off. It was kind of like the Doge cuts, right? Like there were people like, just gut all of these departments. Who cares? And or I think Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, talks about this a lot. Like, there's a lot of Republicans who just want to cut. And he's like, well, for every so many $1 billion, you're cutting a percentage of GDP. So we have to cut the government slowly because we don't want to just completely decimate the GDP.
It's a
I
balancing
think
act.
that's,
It's like,
yeah,
you know, how much do you cut versus how much does it end up affecting the economy? Versus another thing that he brought up, which has led to like in particular, the universities. I don't have a huge amount of sympathy for the universities. Okay.
no.
I'm not a super expensive 4-year college. Like, it's not really my concern. Also, with the way that they focus on what I think are ridiculous degrees that cost you a whole bunch of money and don't actually get you a legitimate job. Like, they're the least of my concerns. If some Chinese person wants to come over and study gender, studies, I don't care about that as much as I care more about whether it's an American or a Chinese student coming over to learn engineering or become a doctor or something like that. That I'm more concerned about because those are things I think actually legitimately need degrees. But with the rise of AI, things that are like, there's a lot of these degrees that are
Obsolete.
yeah, they're going to be obsolete or they're not going to be necessary until you reach a higher level. And I don't know if that's should be like a priority when it comes to universities. So universities in particular, like when he's talking about, well, they're businesses and we want to make sure that they're able to make money. I'm okay. I don't have like a huge amount of sympathy on that. And so I don't think that his discussion there, and because she's talking about what about Americans who want those seats or those
Degrees.
positions at the universities, those degrees. And I think that's more a legitimate question. And then he kind of tanks it over to like, well, they're a business. And I'm like, no, dude, that's not really the messaging that you need to be so concerned about forward looking to the midterms. But the other one that came in, were you going to add something?
Well, I also think he's cut some sort of a deal with the universities in terms of the business thing. Because in the big beautiful bill, there was something we used to have an upper limit, right? An upper limit of what schools can charge for education. And then of course, what happened and why have things gotten so expensive? Well, the schools charge that upper limit, of where they can get the subsidy for.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
Obama.
that's one of the reasons. Yeah, thank you, Obama. I think that actually started under Bush, or where that really started getting bad. But now, I think the big beautiful bill, you have to double check me on this, that cut that significantly. They cut that thing. So
So
maybe,
now it's like you
yeah,
need to allow some of these overseas students that pay full prices because you've undermined our bottom line. Not undermined, but you've
Yeah.
Which I think is fair. Like, you've cut their bottom line so it would be more affordable for students, but then also they're still interested in order for us to be able to run these programs that we run, we need more money, and we can only charge that to foreign students.
Right.
So
So there's
realistically
that.
and pragmatically, it's not completely insane, even though messaging wise, it's no bueno. It's not great.
No, it's not good. The other thing that there's a national security component with the Chinese students. So they
Yeah.
just yeah, I mean that like a lot of Chinese students are like straight up spies. And that's very concerning. But is it the worst thing in the world that they come here and then we can spy on what they're spying on? Maybe there's something there. Another thing is like one of the reasons I'm not as concerned as some of these people are that like China's going to completely dominate and take over the world is it's just a really, really hostile environment to creatives and to like the upper echelon people who don't want to watch whatever they like the math videos that they allow on the Chinese version of YouTube. They want to use like they want to see American stuff. And so
Yeah.
like there is something to I think that we're headed towards a soft decoupling with China, but there is something to like, okay, if you have a lot of Chinese students coming over and studying here, and then they go back home, and then they realize they don't really want to be at home or they don't I mean, there's a lot of unrest with youth unemployment there right now.
Yeah.
There's
Which a lot of
something
people
to
here in the States, a lot of people don't realize that the youth, in fact, I have some in-laws that are international like teachers at one of the schools in China. And like, there's even this whole movement of, I don't even know exactly what it's called, but it's basically like bumming. Like,
Mhm.
we're not going to participate in a job. We're not going to participate in anything because and there's a term, they actually have like a term for it. I don't know if it's like laying down or it translates to like laying down or something, but it's basically like, especially young men, you have a lot of young
Yeah.
men that are completely separating themselves from what they would be expected to do traditionally, especially because they
Mhm.
have an imbalance of like men versus women and,
Totally.
and all that. So the situation in China isn't as great as China would like it to
To
be,
be
or
yeah.
especially like it for us to see it to be. But in this whole realm, go ahead.
Or well, just I mean, so it's like these are costs and benefits. And right now when Trump is like running on nationalism saying, "Well, is it the worst thing?" I mean, you know what would really I would love to see but would really decimate the real estate industry, especially in like New York and LA? Impose a massive tax on Chinese buyers buying these huge $20 million mansions. The
Yeah,
reason they can charge $20 million for these mansions is not because celebrities and billionaires, American billionaires, are buying them. It's because Chinese billionaires are buying them. That's what's pushing the price up so much in these places. Put a tax on them being able to buy those houses, which most of the time they just buy to be a bank and like just keep money there and they don't ever use
they don't
them.
actually live in it. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
just
they don't.
parking their money there.
Yeah, do that and then you'll start to see housing prices come down, but that would really hurt the real estate industry, which would help a lot of or which would hurt a lot of Trump advisors and probably his own family company and probably, like my family's in real estate, like that would have trickle down effects. So there are these things that I think if you're Trump and you're running on nationalism, but then you also have the pragmatic side, yeah, these two things
I
come into
mean, they
conflict.
conflict. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another one that went really viral was his comments on the H-1B visa. And I'm going to play what he had to say. And I want but I think maybe an unpopular view on this. I actually kind of agree with the president, but let's talk about it. Hold on.
Does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no, you
here.
don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people?
No,
No,
you
you
don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
when you and I were
I'll give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. Making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
So, I don't know. I don't think that's insane. I don't think, okay. So there's this entire debate happening online about the H-1B visa, specifically now look, I will say this, and I think this is all what is currently frustrating me right now with this administration right now, because I'm going to tell you flat out, I'm a little annoyed. I'm a little frustrated.
Same.
Do I regret that I voted for them? Absolutely not. So don't even be like, no, I don't. Okay. But I'm also not a lemming, and I'm going to point out when I have a problem. And so my problem here is, particularly on this issue, is Trump is great at messaging and he's horrible at messaging at the same time. So he's great at very simple messaging. We talk about the memes and how he'll get a good catchphrase and he'll break things down and make it real simple. But then when you get into something that's a little bit more complex and complicated, because he's just so brash and honest, he's like, no, we don't have smart people here. No. And then I'm like, well, that's not what he means. And that is, first of all, the debate that's happening online is we can't just have all of these people when they, we can give these jobs to Americans. And yes, it does get abused. Yes, H-1B needs to be revised. Absolutely. I do not think H-1B should be used for an accountant versus, I don't know, a nuclear scientist. Those two things are completely different. I don't think it should. I think there should be a law that you can't pay them less than you would offer to a U.S. citizen. So I think reforms are definitely needed. But in my personal opinion, it is clear because the college education situation, you would be naive to think that over the last, 20 years, 15 years, that we might have more educated people, but what are they educated in? Is my question.
Well, it used to be, I don't know. Part of me thinks that this is just what the end of history thesis after the Cold War ended, where it's just we're just going to make America incrementally better, which doesn't mean GDP growth. I mean, maybe it does if we're outsourcing things to China, but it doesn't mean we're just going to take what we've got here, be content with 2% growth, like Obama said, and we're just going to redistribute so marginalized peoples are more equitable, and then we're going to make up new groups of marginalized peoples, and that's just kind of what we're going to do, and that's what the world is. Thank God, in a way, we are now entering a period of great power competition again, where it's oh no, actually, we're not producing nearly as many weapons as we need to, and we need people to just do that. We don't need to retrain people to, we don't have 5 years time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it comes
it's
to
the
Taiwan
same thing
and stuff.
too with AI. It's just if we want to really win this war on AI, if we want to increase our supply in weapons in defense, of course we can offer these jobs to Americans. That should be our priority. And I don't think we should have H-1B policies that undermine the employment of American citizens. But I also don't think that we should be absolutely not. Especially I'm thinking, I don't know, what I think is pretty pragmatically, if there is some super scientist, and I think that's the thing. Again, I don't think it should be an accountant. I think it should be someone exceptional. And if there's someone exceptional over in India or China or Bangladesh, I don't even care where, but I would prefer that they're here doing stuff for us versus that they're over there being a brainchild for China or Russia or, whoever.
Right,
And so this absolute idea of absolutely no H-1B, I was why don't we have a discussion instead of what the H-1B is and how we can improve it? And also, let me also point out that he put a price tag on the H-1B of $100,000.
$100,000, yeah. So yeah, so just get rid of H-1Bs for entry level jobs. Totally.
Yeah.
And that is basically a tax. I think he might end up lowering that, but that's a tax that makes it so that, yeah, you're not going to spend $20,000 on an entry level person, but you are going to spend that on a nuclear scientist. And I think
Yeah.
that that fixes the problem. There's a ton of H-1B abuse. I think what this really comes down to is like right now, the right and the left are both in search of a boogeyman for like society's problems. And the right is pinning it on immigrants. Used to be just illegal immigrants. Now it's a lot of like
Yeah,
all of
in
them.
general.
And then the left, it's corporations and billionaires and the monocause, and injustice. But I don't know. So right now on the right, we just need to figure out a way to be like, okay, yes, immigration has been a massive problem. Patrick Casey tweeted this the other day. This is true. We're seeing net negative migration for the first time
Yeah.
in 50 years. So this
Well, and
idea
that's
that
my
Trump
thing.
is,
It's like
yeah,
with this administration, now granted, we also went through, and I think this may be part of it. Like we went through a slow news cycle because the government shut down. So the
mhm,
government shutdown dominated a lot. And when you have a void, something's going to fill it. Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes filled it. Mondani has filled it. This drama right now has filled it. Also, I think objectively, Trump, when he sits down and he just speaks off the cuff like he did in that interview, I think also will, fill that void versus because Bessett also did an interview where he kind of clarified on this. And I just want to provide a contrast on and this is on the H-1B issue specifically.
Unemployment line and say, I'm
Oh,
going to put you into a
yeah.
factory where we're going to make missiles.
Where do you stand, Mr. Secretary?
Brian, for years, 20, 30 years, we have offshored precision manufacturing jobs. And the president's point here is, we can't snap our fingers and say, you're going to learn how to build ships overnight. We want to bring semiconductor industry back to the U.S. There are going to be big facilities in Arizona. So I think the president's vision here is to bring in overseas workers where these jobs went.
Who have skills.
Who have the skills, 3, 5, 7 years to train the U.S. workers. Then they can go home. The U.S. workers fully take over.
So do you understand the concern that people have? Hey, an American can have that job. Why you give it to a guy from
But an
India or
American
China?
can't have that job.
So
because,
it's specific skills.
Because we haven't built ships in the U.S. for years. We haven't built semiconductors. So this idea of overseas partners coming in, teaching American workers, then returning home, that's a home run.
it makes sense. And this is what bothers me so much about the Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, I'm America only thing. Like, we have built a network of countries that we do business with that are so far ahead of the curve. South Korea specifically with the shipbuilding, with those batteries. And I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that he was mad about the rating of that factory with the batteries, because that was really bad for US-South Korea relations. And I'm glad to hear that Trump didn't have anything to do with it and stuff, and that he like regretted it and stuff. But like, I don't know. We're tapping into stuff with the Japanese right now, with the South Koreans. Like, we have like with Taiwan and semiconductor manufacturing, they're building in Arizona. Like, besides the Europeans, which
Yeah, I
like,
don't even want to talk about them.
everyone
don't
thinks
care about
that
them.
Europe's the crown jewel. Europe is Disney. It's a poor Disneyland. They die from heat in the summer, and all they can do is endless bureaucracy. If Europe
It's
has
like,
zero haters, I
you
am
can't
done.
sit at my table. Europe, whatever.
We don't need Europe. But like, we've built these countries that are incredible that we can like really partner with and stuff, and like help us if we're gonna soft decouple from China, that we can like lean on these and like we can all get better. And maybe that's where the nationalistic language falls short. It's like, I don't know. I mean,
Well,
why not
look,
lean on?
let's just be honest, okay? We're in like a sphere, a time where everything is short message, very digestible, no more than 3 minutes, moving on to the next thing. The viral moments are constant. I mean, I track them all the time. That's literally what I do. Sometimes I feel like my brain is mush at the end of the day, just trying to keep up with like figuring out where is all this going. Also, we have to come to terms with, and I'm talking about myself. When I say we, I'm talking about like creators or commentators. I am really at a point where I'm trying to decipher how real is X versus how real is the real world. Not that I really particularly think X is very real, but it's just like I'm trying to figure out how much the conversations on X influence real world people. I mean, I think it really depends on the generation, which I think is one of the issues. Like, I think it's very different, a Gen X like myself versus a Gen Z. We still have old school habits of consuming information. You know what I mean? But I think at the end of the day, it's a lot like the message that this administration needs to figure out is to be honest, because I think one of the big mistakes that is happening is like Trump is just being like, everything's awesome. Everything's great. What are you talking about? Stop saying that. That's not true. That's fake news. And we're like, and it's feeling very Biden-esque. And that was a huge mistake. As opposed to like, why aren't you just honest with, hey, I know that maybe like feel my pain kind of situation. Have a little empathy, acknowledge that people are concerned, explain what you've done so far, explain the situation, and be like, these are the things that we're doing, and this is how we hope. Now, obviously, the legacy media is going to, contrast that. But like, if we're concerned about the midterms and future elections, just be honest.
I have something written about this that I'm gonna have to put up on my Substack or something where like Trump has we have two things, like the death of Charlie Kirk and Trump being incredible at what he does, which is just he shows up somewhere and people want to pay attention.
Yeah.
Trump being a guy from real estate and construction, he should be at every I think what we should, and Charlie before he died was very big on like, we need to bring back the American family. I think the Republican Party could really tap into some of these affordability issues from the pro-family standpoint of saying like, hey, we want young people to be able to feel like they can get married young. The student loan debt crisis, this is making people delay homeownership and getting married and having kids, and then they're having less kids and all these things. Like, we're not building enough homes. Charlie wanted to build 10 million new homes. We have the technology that we could build more homes for cheaper right now. Lennar is building 3D printed homes for 40% less than it would normally take to construct a home. We could do something really cool. Build a bunch of those somewhere. Trump walks around with a hard hat on. You know what I mean?
It's like, I am America's builder.
Yeah, we're building America again. It's remember how bad infrastructure week was in the first term, but like we could really do that this time. Like redo infrastructure week, but not the bad parts. And we could like show yourself building, show yourself like, okay, costs are coming down. Like AI and all of these robotics, we're gonna be able to like pick like, I don't know, the racist trope of the left, like, oh, we need to bring in all these immigrants to pick our strawberries. It's like there's going to be robots to do that, and we are not going to have to exploit slave labor, and it's going to be cheaper because they don't need to take time off, they can't get sick and all of these things, and they can just, I don't know, the Israelis in their like farming technology that they export to here, like the Israelis are so worried about being cut off from the world, they can like basically grow everything, or they have the technology to be able to grow everything to sustain themselves within their country. They can export that places. It's super cool. And my friend was just there talking about it, but like we can like really overhaul the economy in the next 10 years and make things way more affordable and not have to be dependent on like importing a class of slaves, which is what we've been told for a long time. I think that that's going to be really cool, but they have to communicate it. He has to show people that it's coming. You know what I mean? And it's not going to be bad.
Yeah. Well, in that same interview, he was asked specifically on affordability.
Not good.
I think we are doing phenomenally well. This is the greatest economy we've ever had. Their talking points, costs are high, costs are high. By the way, the only thing is beef.
Coffee
is a little high because the ranchers are doing great. Coffee, we're going to lower some tariffs. We're going to have some coffee come in. We're going to take care of all this stuff very quickly, very easily. It's surgical. It's beautiful to watch. But our costs are way lower. Now, Walmart came out with a statement that they do every year for many, many decades. And they said that a Thanksgiving meal costs 25% less this Thanksgiving, coming up, think of that, than it did last Thanksgiving under Sleepy Joe Biden.
So, okay. First of all,
it's the
that
4th of July
Walmart comment that he's saying is for, like, they swapped out products. So it's not the Butterball turkey anymore. It's the Walmart Great Value turkey. So let's, if we're going to be honest, that's honesty. But
And
like,
I think there used to be 18 items in that, and now there's 15. So it's
yeah,
shrinkflation.
like, this is not it. And my concern is that because Trump is just such a salesman, that he's like incapable of being like, it's weird because I actually consider him to be a very like an empathetic man. Like, he cares about people. He listens. Every interview that I've ever heard of people talking about speaking with him, especially if they've gone through some type of difficulty, he always looks for other people's opinions. So in that sense, yes. But when he does these interviews or when he speaks off the cuff, it's very like, what are you talking about, dude? What? Everything. It's great. It's awesome. Everything. And I'm like, stop that.
On one hand, I kind of understand because it's not like you can be like, yeah, it's a disaster, especially when like you can't really claim it's Biden's economy anymore when you've been in office for 8 months and you
Yeah.
did the whole thing with like, we're going to remake the economy with the tariffs. And then he's like, oh, well, the coffee's expensive, but we're going to lower the tariffs. It's like, okay, well.
Well, and now there's this conversation about maybe I don't know. I haven't looked into this, but I saw a Chiron on MSNBC of all things.
Yeah.
And it was tariffs on Italian pasta. And so then there was this conversation of like, well, I hope you're Italian pasta. And I'm like, what? First of all, I have no idea why. Because, like, again, I haven't looked into it. Listeners are very like familiar. I do not like the tariff situation. I was willing to give them a little bit of runway on it, but I don't like it anymore. I actually would like for the Supreme Court to go, no more tariffs, stop it. And I'd be like, okay, cool.
If what the tariffs are doing is driving a decoupling, I love it. I think they're great. I'm the biggest fan of the tariffs. If we are stuck in this interim, and what I mean by decoupling, if forcing all of our partners around the world to choose between us and China, because if you look at these trade deals that we're doing with them, we are really like, you have to make sure the Chinese divest from this port. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
kick them out. Like, these deals are really, really interesting. If that's what the tariffs are going to achieve, and then we're going to be like, okay, fine, we're going to take them off of food and we're going to take them off of this and we're going to keep them on steel and whatever, I'm totally cool with that. I don't know if he's going to accomplish this in 4 years.
That is my concern. And I mean, it's really hard to balance this out, especially like, I think 4 years is generous because if we lose the House, if the Republicans lose the House and during the midterms, he is done. His agenda is like, he is lame duck for the next 2 years. And so and I think would be a really negative effect, or I mean, it's a possible downstream effect for the Republican candidate for 2028, because he's not exactly going to be, I don't think he's going to pull, I don't know, maybe he will. I don't think he's going to pull a Bill Clinton all of a sudden and like work with what's turning into a far left party on the Democrat side. So we're going to be at a stalemate for 2 years. On top of that, probably some investigation into whatever they come up with.
It'll be impeachment showmanship for 2 years.
So like 4 years is generous. I'm
better.
thinking like
That might be better. I mean, it's easier to be the opposition in a way. And so I don't know, if the Democrats win next year and then they only are focused on Trump and they still don't know what they stand for, they're just against Trump and Trump can't rerun anyways. And JD Vance can run on like, okay, we made material impact here, here, and here. We've built this many jobs. We have this much investment. We're building these new homes. We're doing this. We're doing that. Maybe that's going to be easier for him to run than like, okay, Republicans have controlled things for a while. Is your life really that much better? Maybe that would be easier, but I don't know. The tariffs and the
I think for
15-year
sure
mortgages and 15-year car loans.
don't
Who voted
even
for that?
Okay, so first, I think the 15-year car loans was actually not a real thing. I think that was like, I don't know if it was like a meme or an AI or something like that. Like, I think I saw a community note on that.
Really?
So I think it's not real. Yeah, like it wasn't, because what was going around online of the 15-year looked like it was a White House post, but I couldn't find it on the White House account. So I'm not 100% sure.
Are you getting AI duped?
Possibly. I'm not 100% sure. I could be wrong because that was like across my screen while I was doing something else. But just asterisk, there's a possibility that the 15-year wasn't, but the 50-year is a thing.
That's real.
And I think that is estúpido, okay? Like, I think that is absolutely ridiculous. And especially because I think it's a Band-Aid on an issue, because that does not affect the price of housing. That does not make housing cheaper. It just makes, like, it feels very car salesman-y, you know what I mean? Of like, pay $100 a month, for your car, and it's like a 30-year car loan or something. Not to mention how much more you would end up paying in interest and a final price. Like, it is stupid. I don't even, also, please stop comparing yourself to FDR, because I know everybody thinks they love FDR, but
We're
no.
Republicans.
Stop that. Why
What's
are you doing
happening?
that? I don't understand.
And the stimulus checks? Who voted for that?
Nobody. No, I also, and especially because, like, the stimulus checks is only supposed to go to, like, if you make a 100,000 or less, like a family of 100,000 or less. So I'm like, okay, cool. I make maybe, I don't know, 110,000. I have to pay all this extra money because of tariffs or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, that to me is just a different form of redistribution. If you're going to do it, like, I'm more willing to do it if it's to pay down the deficit versus, because I think that will affect the economy and for everyone overall versus this piecemealing and stuff. And I think that's one of the things that are very different between a traditional, like, Republican versus Democrat platform, is that the Democrat is often focused on some group or individual identity and creating programs to help them specifically individually, versus Republican policies tend to be much more macro. And so the goal is to help everyone, but that takes a whole lot more work and a whole lot more time. And you can't just say, hey, I just dropped $2,000 in your bank account. Like, Republicans don't have that messaging point. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
I did see somebody tweet something funny that was like, you know what, if we're going to do it, send out the tariff check so people like the tariffs, and then send out another one for the 250th birthday and sign it and have it go in October of 2026, signed by President Trump. Just like,
everybody's like,
Republican. Like, like, if we're going to do it, just like be slimy and just do it. And make it actually do something, like, actually mean something. But I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things where I feel like people were getting burnt out on the foreign policy thing. I only care about foreign policy, and I'm even burnt out on, I'm not burnt out on it. I'm burnt on hearing people's opinions about it who I don't like. And so, like, I'm even burnt out on it. So I think, yes, shift back focus to domestic issues. And then last week happened, and they're at least rightfully, we understand that Mandami won because he went on affordability, and so we need to focus on that again. But let's just do a little bit more of a brainstorming session on what we're doing about affordability. Not just like, hey, affordability's back in, and it's like, okay, fine, we'll release some tariffs, or
we'll send you $2,000 or whatever. And I'm just like, no,
we'll send you money, and we'll do this loan, and we'll get rid of these tariffs. So yes, I'm implicitly saying that they raise prices. Let's just think this through, because we can do this. Let's just think it through.
I mean, I think we forget that it is partly the nature of the president, where he just kind of like throws out this idea to kind of like feel how are people going to respond to it. And then when he gets a positive response, he leans into it. He gets a negative response, he like leans. It's like he does his own polling. Like most traditional Republicans or most traditional politicians will get a focus group, do some polling, keep it on the down low, assess the situation. But that takes much more time. It takes money. And he's just like, blah, let me just put out this idea and see how people respond. And then the news cycle changes and we actually forget, and I think, I've been frustrated, but we also have to acknowledge that it's like human nature, where he came in, he immediately shut down the border. He immediately dealt with crime. He dealt with the things that he can deal with within his power in the immediate, forcibly, but he was able to do it. And so now we're like, okay, cool. So that stuff is, and it's like people suddenly forget those accomplishments and those things. And they start to think about, rightfully, what is because you make promises and he's met a lot of them. But as you keep checking off those boxes, people will forget about him. They'll no longer be a priority. They'll forget that they need to maintain a priority because once the next administration comes in, they're likely to undo them.
Yeah.
So, I think we just are dealing with a messaging issue and we're dealing with an attention deficit issue.
Well, and like I mean, now that immigration's not a top concern, or like at least illegal crossings aren't, healthcare's back up there.
I wrote a post about this because, and I was like, I fully think that right now there's this whole thing about the government shutdown and it accomplished nothing. And yes, it did accomplish nothing in the moment. But I am telling you that healthcare is going to be the abortion issue for the midterms, in that the administration let it go. They're not really good at messaging. The fact is that the reason that the cost of the ACA and healthcare has gone up is squarely on the Democrats.
Yeah.
But the Democrats have a very simple message to be like, well, they let these subsidies expire and now your insurance is super expensive. And they completely miss the fact, or conveniently don't mention the fact that the reason that they're so expensive is because
of
of your ACA policy.
Yeah.
But you've been covering it up with taxpayer money and giving it over to the insurance companies. So it's not, I did a whole Substack on it and it's free to everybody if anybody wants to read it. But I think it's going to be a major issue in the midterms.
It's going to be interesting to see what. I was listening to Two-Way the other day, and Mark Halperin and Sean Spicer and them were talking about, and Dan were talking about, like, what is he going to say in the State of the Union? And at first I got kind of killed by that, and I was like, yeah, all the things you just mentioned. The border's closed. Crime is down in places where they're running these raids. We've deported this many people. This many people have self-deported. No tax on tips, whatever. We passed this tax cut. The Big Beautiful Bill was the most partisan Republican bill passed in, like, I don't know, 15 years. Like, I don't know. Like, we're talking about welfare reform again. We're talking about SNAP and how many people are on SNAP again. Like, these are big things. But yeah, what is he going to say about healthcare? And Sean was like, well, I mean, he has like a free market approach to it. We just don't have consensus in the Republican Party, and that's going to be the issue. And so I hope that we can get someone, I don't know, we need to like build more, and we need to do healthcare. And we need to
I think healthcare is going to be a big one. And I think it's also educating people on the issue with the ACA and how much of a failure it is. And the fact that I find it very interesting that the Democrats are always really like gripey about insurance companies and putting money into the pockets of health insurance companies. And you got these not Mondani. Oh my gosh, the other guy, Luigi Mangione, but the fact is that it is the ACA, the Democrat ACA, that was voted on only by Democrats, that has increased these costs, and they have been covering it up with subsidies. So like maybe in someone's pocket, it's not more expensive, but it is because of the credits and the subsidies that are being paid directly to the insurance company and how much their profits have increased. So spare me.
You know what I also think is interesting about that, though? And I meant to say this earlier, but I haven't. I think that still we are so divided on like messaging right now. Republicans, I think, less than ever before hear what Democrats think and say, because nobody trusts the mainstream media anymore. It used to be that conservatives could hear out the left, but then we had our own thing going on too with Fox and stuff. And like the left really has no idea. You know what I mean? Like the left is so convinced that they won the government shutdown, and the right is pretty convinced. And I more so think that the right is winning that from a polling perspective, just from the sheer fact that House Democrats crossed over and voted to reopen the government.
Yeah.
If this was a winning issue for them, they wouldn't have done that. I think 6 House Republicans did and then 8 Senate Democrats. So I don't know. Like, I think that there's kind of something there. I just wonder, like, how much of this is, I don't know, how much of the infighting is making us think that it's all over for Trump and it's not, and how much of this is just like, I don't know what anybody in the middle thinks. I think the right has way more media
No,
capture
I
than we.
completely agree with you. I think we're flying blind a little bit. I mean, there have been some recent polls and stuff that,
Yeah.
Trump is underwater and everything, but then also at the same time, it's like, how much do you trust these polls? Like, I really feel like we're flying a little blind, but I do know that, you know, the president is someone that only, I don't know, Trump whisperers can relate to or understand, or someone who's consuming him consistently and analyzing him kind of like can decode what he's saying and sees, what's the word I'm looking for, patterns of behavior, and can kind of see what to expect down the road. Versus if you're an independent, or even if you're like a normie that's not really paying attention, all you're getting is these snippets, he's off-putting. And, especially on the immigration issue, if you're especially listening to mostly mainstream media. And I say that, like, I'm not 100% sure there's a hard, he is done for, or we're absolutely winning. I really don't know. I don't think it's that simple, especially because we're so divided right now. And, there's a lot of people that are single issue, like they get focused on a single issue. And so if the Democrats can make healthcare that single issue, then it
Yeah.
becomes, it's a much more of an uphill battle.
But you know what I also think too? I'm just thinking about this now because what you were saying is so true about like how they always look for one specific group of people and like how can we bring this one specific group of people up? Most people get insurance through their employer and they don't really deal the cost is rising for the employer, but they don't really pass that down to the employee. There's a very specific group of people who don't have healthcare, and that group is less than when the
Yeah.
Affordable Care Act was passed because of Medicaid expansion and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's people who are self-employed who tend to be Republican, and now are maybe going a little bit more towards the left with some of these things if they're mad about the tariffs, if they're mad about healthcare, all of these things. Yeah, I mean, it's the idealists who want just the idea of everyone to have healthcare as if that means we're all healthy. And then the very specific group of people who are self-employed and have to buy their own health insurance and know it's way more expensive.
Which most of them were actually very upset about the ACA in general, especially in the beginning.
Exactly.
So
if
I don't
we
know.
make a couple reforms to that, I don't know. I mean, do you think that I'm curious what you think about this? Do you think that we're still in an age of like idealism where we this is just how it should be? I feel like we're kind of out of that.
I think people are becoming, especially like average people, are becoming more realistic on things.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why I'm saying like the messaging matters. I think people, because they don't trust the media and because they don't trust the institutions, I think if you're honest with your messaging and are skilled in explaining the issues, people are more open to it now versus back in the day where they just wanted like a simple message. Like I really do. I think people are a little bit more open to it because we've become much more open to like do your own research or investigate yourself or questioning narratives. And so I think if you are much more skilled in the explanation of what your end goal is and how we need to go through these steps to get there, and you're honest and you're not just saying, oh, the economy is great when people aren't feeling it is, I think that is much more, people are more susceptible to that than if you're just like a zombie repeating the same message, because that's what the previous administration did. Like everybody, like a bunch of lemmings, just kept repeating the same message and then making things up to cover up what we all were seeing with our own eyes. So it is very important to me, and I think it's very important that this administration does not repeat the same thing. And I'm a little concerned after that interview that could go that way.
That interview concerns me, but if you look at like, I don't know, if you look at what his surrogates think, I don't know. I don't
like if
I think the gaslighting was bad. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the Bidens.
No,
Maybe I'm
no.
biased.
But I'm just saying, like, no, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I see signals, and
Yeah.
I really, before it becomes an issue, I want the correction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I'm mentioning it now versus I'm just going to keep saying, no, he's like, everything's great. Everything's awesome.
Yep.
Like, no, absolutely not. So, okay, I want to wrap us up, but I want to wrap us up because I want to share this video and I think it's really funny. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Do you have time for it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So MSNBC, I keep saying MSNBC, and they still are MSNBC, but they are launching their rebrand of MS Now or Miss Now, depending on I think Miss Now is
Yeah.
way better than MS Now. Also, when I first saw it, I immediately thought about, I was like, MS is in multiple sclerosis, right now. That was the first thing that popped into my head, but
Yeah, who did the branding on that?
they put out a new promo ad for their rebrand, and the Washington Free Beacon did this amazing edit because it was revealed that, because remember, MSNBC is the most progressive. They used to have Joy Behar, or not Joy Behar. They used to have Joy Reid. She's gone. And all of their primary, most famous anchors they're all white. So MSNBC hired diversity, people of color, and the Washington Free Beacon did this cut breaking it down, and I think it is absolutely hilarious, so I have to share it with everyone. I really hope you guys are watching it, and if you're not watching, take the time to find it on our YouTube channel so you can watch this along with us, because I thought it was freaking hilarious. Okay, here we go.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more
Actor. So these are all the commercials he's been in, ZipRecruiter.
And all powered by Intuitive for hospitals, care teams, patients, and surgeons in training like me.
He's a doctor. He eats fried chicken.
of the United States.
Skiing? I don't even know what this is. This is embarrassing.
States.
I'm sorry, everybody, but we are no longer seeing people for this role.
So and he keeps going like that. The entire video is just breaking down like all the different actors that are in the video, MS Now. I just realized that it wasn't. Are you seeing it? Yeah, you are seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
No, it's
I thought this was every single person that is in this ad that is a minority, a person of color, like whatever, what have you. It's not that is non-white has been a hired actor.
You know, it's funny because we are complaining about what we're not liking out of this administration, but we have to remember where we would be if this administration was not in, because they would still be gaslighting us. That would still be every commercial. We would not get the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad. We would not get like
Anything,
we would not have
any of
the
this. I just think it's hilarious because MSNBC, who's supposed to be like one of the most progressive networks, totally pro DEI. They have, I mean, when Trump has made his reforms in regards to DEI, which by the way is another thing that the administration promised and delivered on, they have been freaking out, hair on fire. Trump doesn't want you to know about racism or slavery, which is absolutely not the case. And they go and they launch and rebrand, and their platform or their network lacks so much diversity that they have to hire actors.
Watching that, the fact that they went and found all of the old ads,
the Washington Free Beacon, I think is hilarious.
And doesn't that violate something where it's like we need to hire these type of actors? I don't know. That's what we could be. That's where we could be at. We could have another 5 million illegal immigrants in by now, other than the 20 million that came in, and still have all these DEI ads. So we have to understand where we are. We should be happy.
I know we have come a long way. I mean, we got a long way to go, but we have come a long way. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You guys, Rachel will be back on Tuesday, but let's all give Amanda a little round of applause for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me to talk about something other than.
Yeah, well, I was like,
I'm glad I have takes. I was worried I wouldn't have them, but I'm glad I have some.
Well, we talk about this on back channels and stuff like that all the time. And I especially wanted to talk to you because I was like, you're consuming other stuff that I am not consuming. And I was like, I want to hear the take. Like, because I want to know, like, am I crazy? Am I just too stuck in my, like, I don't think I'm pretty, like, stuck in my, what would be considered uber traditionalist, boomer-esque type mindset.
No, you're not.
So I was like,
You're not.
thank you. Thank you very much. I feel so much better.
I don't think I'm like a griper either. So maybe we're like the kind of like the middle.
I've always joked this. Rachel and I joke about this all the time, where it's like, look, I am like, if you're coming to listen to this podcast or to subscribe to my Substack because I'm going to come up with some off the wall out there conspiracy, or I'm going to immediately jump on some bandwagon because everybody is doing that, you're not going to find it. And I'm never going to be rich because of it.
Yeah. Same.
This is where it is, and I'm okay with that. So we'll see how it progresses. Thank goodness I enjoy it, because otherwise, why else would I be here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Friend, if this is your first time here, welcome. You have found your new favorite podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button or subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching. If you consider becoming a paying supporter, please click the link in the show notes for a discount code where you'll get ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, and you will also get this video episode early, a day early, on our Substack. Again, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday in your ear, and our friend Rachel will be back next week once she is recovered from her
retreat.
And I think she's going to have another one. So if you're interested in joining one of her retreats, I'm pretty sure, here I am promoting it. I'm not 100% sure, but go check out her Instagram profile. I'm sure she has it up there somewhere. She's so much better at doing like promo than I am. I shared that meme one time. Like, Rachel comes into a room and she wants to talk to everyone, and I have like my sunglasses and I don't want to make contact.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, friends. So here's a reminder that the media is trash and we have no tolerance for it. Okay. Bye.